Hello, this is Naomi with Planet on a Post-it, and welcome to the Planet on a Post-it podcast, where we talk about event planning, work-life balance, and leadership. This episode, we're going to be sitting down with Lindsay Anvik. Lindsay is a wonderful, wonderful fourth-generation entrepreneur and CEO of See Endless. We are going to be talking to her about leadership, talking to her a little bit about the seminars that she gives and her advice for event planners that are looking to continue to hold down the lines of leadership. Before we get started in that interview, I did want to make a few announcements. We have a new book club book, guys. So our new book is Free to Focus by Michael Hyatt, and we're looking to be delving into that conversation on Wednesday, June 5th at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. I really hope that you all can join us. I think that's 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. So I really, again, hope that you all are able to join us. Really looking forward to the conversation. This book really talks about productivity, saving time, working with your email inbox. And I know that those are things that we definitely have some troubles with. We could use some more assistance with, and could use some best practice tips in order to be able to get through our day the most efficiently way that we can. I wanted to also remind you that there is another episode. Episode 1 was an interview with Erin Chapman, and we talked to her about leadership from a CEO perspective. So definitely go back to that episode and take a listen. Let us know what you think. We also have a couple new things going on the website, so make sure that you're always following our posts so that you can be up to date in everything that we're talking about on the website. Also, Facebook, make sure you go in there, like the Facebook page, follow on Twitter, and even like this episode right here and give it a rating and comment. Would love to hear what you have to say. So without further ado, I wanted to go ahead and introduce Lindsay Anvik and give you a little bit more about her. So Lindsay travels the world, and she gives seminars on productivity, leadership, marketing. She's worked with Fortune 500 companies and major museums to mom and pop companies. She develops webinars and education series to help companies grow and develop happier and more motivated workforces. Her company is See Endless, so you can go to it by going seeendless.com. It is focused on helping leaders and employees tap into their endless potential, and we could use a lot of that. Her business advice and strategies have led to coverage in the New York Times, Forbes, InStyle magazine, Wall Street Journal, ABC News, and more. And she's been a featured contributor on MSNBC's Your Business several times. So without further ado, I want you to sit back, relax, enjoy this interview that I had with Lindsay, and I will come back at the end and wrap it up with a few takeaways of my own. Thank you. All right. Well, today we're talking with Lindsay Anvik, and really excited to jump into what she has to share with us in regards to productivity, leadership, and marketing. So, Lindsay, welcome. Welcome to Talking with Planet on Post-it.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Us too. Well, I am. I definitely am too. So I wanted to ask you to tell us briefly about your story, how you come to be a successful professional business coach and speaker. Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I started off after college in music and film and really sort of enjoyed that experience, and got into the promotion side of film and music, and that included some events and PR. And then when I turned 30, I really wanted to switch it up a little bit, do something on my own, take ownership of things, have a little more interaction with clients. And so I started my own company, and then fast forward 7 years, I'm still standing and doing great. And it's funny, I started speaking as a way to promote my business coaching and found that it was more of my calling. I mean, I love business coaching too, and I still do that. But if I could speak every day, I would. So it's I came by it sort of by happenstance.
And you just love it. You love
Yes.
talking, and speaking, huh?
Yeah.
So what about the music? What types of music did you dabble in?
So I worked for Eminem and 50 Cent
Oh,
on
no
their
way, really?
record label. So that was my first job out of college. And then I segued into documentary and independent film and getting them sort of distribution. So it was a great experience. Both of them, they threw me in the deep end and were just like, figure it out, which is, I think, similar to the event space. You're sort of, thrown all these things and you
Right,
sort of have to figure it out on the fly lots of times. So I had a lot of fun doing it.
right. We like to call that baptism by fire, they
Right.
say.
True.
Well, that sounds like a pretty exciting time. So, and after going through that, you decided to just have your own company. Tell us about that, and what was the decision to kind of branch out on your own?
When I was in college, I almost was a therapist. And
Oh,
I considered doing that because I really like the idea of helping people.
mm,
And when I was doing more one-on-one coaching with clients, at the PR agency, I found that that was my favorite part of my job. Although I really like the creativity aspect, teaching them about certain things or coaching them on certain aspects of their business seemed to be the most enjoyable to me. And
mm,
so I think it makes sense because I liked the fact that I was helping them, and
mm-hmm.
so it just was a natural sort of progression to do more of that.
That's great. Kind of a natural born teacher and leader. And I like that because some people don't always aspire to do that. So it's great when people recognize that within themselves, right?
Yeah,
If
of
we want to do
course.
that.
Yeah.
Great. So tell us about where you are now and being a professional speaker, and just how is that so much different than, where you were before?
Well, I think that what's great is that right now I get to travel all over the world, which I love. That's my favorite part of the job besides helping people.
Hmm.
And I like that I can help a group of people at once, often when I'm speaking, as opposed to just one on one. So I still do business coaching quite a bit. But like I said, if I could speak every day, I definitely would. And it feels great to work with event planners. And, they always have interesting ideas about topics and all kinds of insight about audience members. And so it's always fun to work with them to, help make their event better.
Hmm. Yeah. So what are, I guess, with the travel aspect, I'm assuming that you speaking means that you're on the road a lot. So what are some of the challenge that comes from the travel aspect that you have to overcome, or that you had to overcome to get comfortable with it?
I think trying as much as you can to maintain a schedule. So I am a big proponent of waking up early. I used to be a night owl, but now I wake up early and I work out and I have time to myself to do either read read the paper, drink some coffee, just have some downtime before I start my workday. And that I try to have that when I'm on the road. So it's a similar sort of, okay, we're up, we've worked out, we've done something good where the endorphins are flowing. And now we have a little bit of time to ourselves. And now we can devote the rest of the day to the event and the
Hmm.
audience, because as I'm sure, as if you get going, by the end of the day in a conference, or a trade show, you want to lay down, you want to have a cocktail and then lay down.
Exactly. So how did you make that transition to waking up early? I know a lot of people are night owls. I'm included. I love to stay up very late. Sometimes my husband doesn't like that. But what what are some of the things that got you into waking up early to have that time for yourself?
I think one of the biggest things was that I found that I was compromising myself the majority of the days in the
Hmm.
week. And so I never really got time for myself because I would always put my clients or my family or, my relationship first.
Hmm.
And by the end of the day, there was not much left. And so then I just kept working. And so I tried, it took me quite a while to get into the morning routine, and it's still a battle some days, but that was the priority. It was like, if I don't take it in the morning, I know by 7 o'clock, I'm not going to take it because too many other things will get in the way. So for me, it was just putting myself first, which is a hard thing, I think, for all women to do, because we are sort of natural born, givers. And
Exactly.
so I decided to take it for myself. And I found out that I'm better at work. I'm better at home. I'm in a better mood because I have a little time. And so that, and also I feel like I function better on a sort of like wake up early, go to bed early, earlier routine. So, but it did take a few months of transition.
Yes. And I'm sure, now it works for you because you feel a little bit more fulfilled because you do have that time for yourself in the morning, and you're able to feed yourself first before you feed other people, I guess.
100%. And that's what keeps me doing it. Cause I don't want to wake up early. I don't want to wake up when it's still dark outside. That's like my nightmare. But the benefit is knowing that like you said, I get to feed myself before, and that makes me so much better during the day.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure it helps overcome some of the challenges that you might have as a professional business coach as well and speaker. So what are some of those challenges that you have with what you currently do?
I think managing all the moving parts for sure is a big piece of it. I always try to do a survey with the audience if I know who they are beforehand, or if the event planner has access to them beforehand, and then I incorporate it into my talks, which makes my process of creating a presentation a lot longer. But I feel like it makes it much more interesting for me. It makes it much more valuable for the audience. So balancing that time and because I love research and sort of the latest, greatest things about news and whatever I'm talking about, I can go deep down the rabbit hole of that. And I have to sort of pull myself back up and, sort of stay on task. So I would say that's probably the biggest one. And then I think that, the other challenge that I have is just I feel like event planners don't utilize speakers enough, and not because they don't think about it, but because they're too busy doing a million other things. So like once they book a speakers, they have the contract, they know when you travel, and they've secured your hotel, and they move on to the next thing. And I think that they could squeeze way more out of us in terms of content creation, in terms of sort of one-on-one coaching with audience members, just doing more things, taking, and I also think we're great for feedback too about the conference, because we're often in the same hotels, taking the same shuttles, and both the vendors or the audience members tend to talk to us like we're a peer, even though we're hired by the event company. So we tend to hear pretty honest feedback, but as a speaker, we can give them give event planners sort of constructive feedback, both positive and negative. Whereas I feel just the audience and the attendees sometimes in general just are, chronic complainers in some ways, because you can't please everyone, and no one's ever going to be 100%. Yeah, of course. No one's ever going to be 100% happy, but I think that event planners sometimes forget that we're sort of on the inside in a lot of ways. And so I always try when I can to post event, share with the event, like the shuttle's running great this time, whatever you guys are doing, I feel like it's working great. And other people were talking about that. And, this new thing came in and they like this about it, but not that. And just as a way to help them, and not in a way that's, and I try to be mindful of what they can control. Obviously they can't control if the bus driver has bad music on the shuttle, to the event, but I'm sure, unfortunately, the event planner may hear about those things. So I try to make it constructive.
Right. And you bring up a good point that speakers are already there, especially for a certain amount of time. So leveraging them for feedback, or maybe pre-post videos. I've seen some speakers do that as well. And then maybe even breakout sessions. Those are some other areas in which speakers can be leveraged too. Any other ideas or any other areas where you've seen people, let's say, utilize you where they can, just to give some ideas to our event planners out there?
Sure. I always love to follow up with saying, leading up to the event and then after the event, why don't I write a few articles for email, or for your blog or for the event, page, so that people can get excited about the topics that are going to be talked about. But, I also get the benefit of, people knowing that I'm going to be there and what I have to say, and they get some content, which I know is always sort of an extra stressor on them.
Mm-hmm.
And then sort of webinars and things like that. I've been, working with more event planners, post and pre, saying, why don't we do some more follow-up on this? We've gotten this feedback that they want more of this or that. Why don't we do something and record it, and then people can access it whenever they want. And so, like I said, I think that event planners, they have so many things on their plate that it's, they forget sometimes to sort of squeeze the speakers as much as they can for some of those things, because, I at least I am more than willing to help an event planner, because I want the event to be great, and I want the attendee experience to be really positive, and I want as many people there as possible. So however I can aid in that, I definitely want to be a part of. And then afterwards, the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I really like the idea of the survey and being a little bit more targeted for the attendees that are in the audience. And the fact that you do that is great. I think it's well worth the time, right, that you put into doing it, because you can then tailor what you're speaking about to their audience specifically. So that's great.
Yeah, and I think the audience usually has a really great response to it, because they know that I've looked at their business, or they know that I know more of their pain points, and I try to really address those specifically. So then, even if I'm talking about a general subject, I can really dig into whatever some of their problems are, and give them some help and advice and tips and suggestions, so that they can leave with some really sort of concrete things. Because I think one thing that I see sometimes with speakers is that people leave and it's a very macro speech, and that's great to some extent, sometimes for motivation or for sort of trends and things like that. But in terms of like concrete advice, like what do I do today from this? It can be harder. So that's another one of the reasons why I like to personalize my talks.
I think another area that event planners have, trouble in understanding too, is what the trends are in the speaker world. Because I think either we're going internally for speakers within our organization. If we go externally, maybe someone already has a recommendation. But what are some of the trends that you're seeing in the speaker industry?
I think it's getting to be way more interactive. I think, it used to be a speaker would get up and just talk for an hour and that was it. And now I've found that there's a lot more interaction. There's a lot more question and answer than there ever used to be. I think that sometimes the way that it's set up can be more where the speaker has more one-on-one time with smaller groups. So, more breakout sessions, but also finding ways for the audience to also connect with each other. So sometimes I've seen where, I try to, connect, one audience member with another. So if one is having a problem, it's saying, okay, if you're a supplier and you're, a buyer, try to find each other and, in this room, and sort of see how you can help each other, or see, where you guys overlap with business.
Right. Yeah. No, I see that too. I think everywhere, everybody wants engagement. So I think, again, like you mentioned on the speaker level, just finding ways for the speaker to engage on the level of the attendee is very important too. So thank you for that. So tell us a little bit about just stressful moments and just leading teams in the time of stress. And I know that you're definitely a leadership expert. Wanted to tap into your knowledge about how leaders can motivate their teams and how you can see managers or leaders helping their teams with their work-life balance. Has that been kind of a hot topic these days?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I would say my best advice, especially in moments of stress, is to remember to praise publicly and to critique or give maybe negative feedback privately. And, this can be difficult, especially in a stressful setting or a setting where there's a whole group there. we tend to want to, say, why did you do this? But, and it's just a natural thing that our brain does, why did you do this? Even though it's in front of a bunch of people, but what that does for the, worker is, sort of make them self-conscious, make them defensive, embarrass them, even though we may not be trying to do that, obviously, that's never our intention. So, taking someone aside is always a good idea. And then the opposite is true. If someone's doing a great job, it's important that in front of their peers, other leaders, your boss, if you have a boss, to see that, you're also praising your team and giving credit where credit's due, and that the team can see that. I'm also a big proponent of, instead of saying, who did this or who screwed this up, I say, how did this happen?
I love that.
Because that's a big difference. Because instead of blaming, and figuring out who's to blame, which in the end doesn't really matter unless that's a super consistent pattern, then that's another issue. But how did this happen? Because sometimes Joe may have screwed it up, but it's really because Alyssa forgot to do something, so that then Joe ended up taking the fall, but it was really sort of a chain reaction. And maybe Alyssa forgot to do something because she was told to do something else. And so if you can get the whole bird's eye view of the situation and say, how did this happen? I think the team is more likely to give you feedback. And if they know you're not going to jump on them and blame people right away, or, that that's not your goal, they're much more likely to be open and honest about what went wrong. And then you can say, all right, well, how do we fix this? Here's my idea, or what do you guys think? How do you guys, how can we help each other not have this happen in the future? And to me, that's what being a team is. It's not blaming people, not pointing the fingers, but coming together and saying, okay, this happened, let's move on. How do we make this not happen in the future? And, let's keep going. Let's not worry about that. Now we're looking forward.
Right. And nobody truly sets out to to do something wrong.
Of course, yeah.
It's usually a chain reaction, or it's a systemic thing. And, getting to the bottom of it by saying, how did this happen, really helps you start off in the right spot. So I really
especially with events too. I feel like with events, it can be a super chain reaction. So many things can, be a domino effect. So it's good to know where this, how it started and how, what happened.
I agree. And it helps you get to the decision quicker too, instead of saying, who did this? Right. How did it happen? Right. So you're making quick decisions, especially when you're out on site, like you mentioned, with events. Absolutely. So, so tell us about just your tips on managing stress, or just managing productivity. We are now in an era where we're doing more meetings, less time. We need to do more with less. Can you share some tips on how we can continue as leaders to do more with less?
Sure.
How can we pack our day into one day out of 7 days a week?
So in terms of meetings, it used to drive me crazy when I was at a big PR agency that we would be called to a meeting and then asked to brainstorm at that meeting. And no one ever had a really good idea. And so when I got to a point where I could hold the meetings, and then from then on, I always asked my team to do the work before the meeting and gave them very specific, measurable things I wanted them to do. So come to, tomorrow's meeting with 3 event ideas, or 3 event themes, or 3 ways that we could, promote this on social media. And we're all going to share our ideas and sort of move forward from there. And that way they know what's expected of them. They know what we're going to do. I'm not wasting anyone's time by us sitting there looking at each other, trying to figure out, coming up with an idea at the top of our, out of nowhere. And, I know what I'm going to get. If I have 10 people in the room and everyone's coming with 3 ideas, I'm going to have 30 ideas plus my own. So, that's a good starting point. So I think that's important. Whenever possible, I like to have meetings standing up, because people don't tend to, lollygag when we're all standing up. And of course, that's not possible for everything, but it actually can be a great way to increase productivity, because it's sort of like a football huddle. People tend to get to the point much easier. I do something called I park things, during meetings, because I think what happens lots of times is when people get distracted or it's been a while, people tend to bring up random things that have nothing to do with the topic. Like, oh, it's Susie's birthday on Thursday. Where should we go? We should get her cupcakes. And then a war breaks out about who has the best cupcakes in town. And
30 minutes later.
Right. 30 minutes later, we haven't decided about the cupcakes or whatever the meeting was about. So I like to say, okay, we want to take care of Susie's birthday. Let's park that, or, come see me about that later, or go talk to Suzanne and have her decide, just sort of immediately push it to the side, but give sort of an action item to whoever brought it up so that they know it'll get addressed, but that right now we're focusing on something else. Mm-hmm. I try not to check email constantly. I try to check email at the top and the bottom of the hour, which I know is anxiety inducing for some event planners, because
we get a lot of email.
You do.
Oh my goodness.
But I think that it gets in the way of me doing work, because if I'm, if I spend, 10 or 20 minutes out of an hour writing emails, to me, that's productive. But then the rest of the 40 minutes, if every time I'm trying to finish a contract or, finish up a talk or do some research, I'm looking at my, email, my brain is in half and I can't focus on one thing or another. So I find that checking it at the top of the hour, the bottom of the hour, the middle of the hour for, 10 or 20 minutes responding, is good. And then the rest of that time I can really focus on a task.
Right. And items that are probably more important to your agenda, not to be selfish, but you need to do your work.
Of course. Yes. And then I always, let people know, if it's an emergency, call me. Don't text, call me if it's an emergency. And then, but it's rare that it's that big of an emergency. So almost no one calls. So then I know that if it's 20 minutes later that they hear from me, it's okay, because it's only 20 minutes. And the other thing that I do sort of be more productive is I block off times for everything during the day. So every task has 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, however long I assign to it. And I started out way too fast. So I started out, blocking off every day. And I rebelled against myself. I was like, I'm not doing this, even though I put it in place for myself, by myself. And I found myself not being able to deal with that. So then I just started with 3 days a week in the morning. So from 9 to 12, I blocked off my times, and I found out those were the most productive days. And then I started doing it every morning from 9 to 12, and then 3 days a week, all day long, and now it's about 4.5 days. My Friday afternoons are still free. It's my one free moment. But I find I'm a lot more productive, because I know, okay, I have 20 minutes to get this contract done. And then it's going to get done in 20 minutes, because that's the time that I allotted. And then I can push it off my plate, and I don't have to worry about the 10 other things, because I've blocked off time for them. So, I can focus on just what I need to at that moment, and knowing that other things each have an assigned time and a place in my day gives me a lot less anxiety and allows me to focus without worrying, oh, when am I going to get to that? Am I going to be able to do that? Well, if you allot time, it can alleviate a lot of sort of stress and worry, and promote focus.
Yeah, scheduling time in the calendar is totally key. I think that helps me too. I love that. Anything you need, just put it in your calendar.
Yes. So even the smallest task. I know it sounds so silly, but it's a way to sort of get things done.
It is, because every piece of time is valuable, for sure. So making sure it has a purpose, so you're working with purpose.
Yes.
So what do you do when you have saved so much time and you're so efficient? Do you usually put more work in there, or how do you balance your life, balance that out with the time that you save from being so productive?
Sometimes I'll add in more things that are a little bit back burner, but I would like to get to quicker, but they're not immediate. I can fill in there with some of that extra time. And, the rest of the time is time for me, because I've organized my days and blocked off pretty much every task I'm going to do, even the smallest one. I tend to get almost everything on my list, if not everything, and then some, done. So then I have time to cook dinner and to call a friend and to, do all those sort of life balance things that we wish we could do. And before, when I didn't block off time and wasn't prioritizing my to-do list, I felt like I never had enough time and I never got everything I needed to get done. And, I even factor how long it'll take me to drive places and drive back. And, all that stuff is sort of factored into my day so that I really know how much I can get done in a day.
Right. And you touched a little bit on wasting time a bit. I know sometimes as a leader, you might have people on your team that don't have time for a lot. And even as leaders, maybe we feel like we do not have time. So what are your suggestions just from talking on leadership and productivity? How can people find out where is their time being wasted and how they can help themselves out with that problem that they have?
I think some of the thing is finding ways to interrupt yourself when you want to distract yourself. So maybe limiting the amount of time you have on social media, and really looking at your phone, and it tells you now if you have it there.
Yes, on your iPhone.
Right, which is horrifying. Yes. Sometimes it was horrifying for me when I found out. But it's also a reality check, to say I'm spending way too much time on these 3 apps. I don't need to be spending that much time. I'm wasting time. And so I think that's a good thing to do. I always, whenever I see an article that I want to read, even if it's something personal, professional, whatever it may be, I always click it and I save the article link to an Evernote app, but you can save it in your notes in your iPhone or wherever. And then when I'm waiting online at the grocery store or I'm waiting for someone for a meeting, I click through and read the articles then. So then I know I won't lose them and I'm going to be able to read them. I just don't have to interrupt what I'm doing right then to read the article, because I think that can also be a way to distract ourselves. I try to do 2 things at once, in the sense of, not that I'm splitting my tasks, but when I'm driving, I like to make birthday calls, how are you doing calls, calls with clients. I like to do sort of what I call sweat working. So I'll have clients or potential clients maybe meet me for a yoga class or, a spinning class.
That's a good idea.
And that way we're both doing something positive for ourselves. We feel really good afterwards. Usually we're both in a really good mood, and it gives us a little bit of time, but there's not that super heavy pressure of trying to, close that deal. And then I've also gotten to do something good for myself, and so have they. And so it's sort of, and I do that with friends and family too. So if I don't have time to see them, I try to work in either a workout or some kind of meal. Like I often don't eat breakfast or lunch alone, and it's my time to just catch up with people, catch up with staff, catch up with clients, potential clients, family, friends. Those are really good times because you have to eat. And so instead of eating at my desk, I try to do that also. And that's another way to sort of check off some of those boxes.
Oh, I really like those ideas. And did you call it sweat working? I like
Yes.
that. That's a really great idea. I think I read an article about walking meetings too, starting to walk, just like your other suggestion of standing and having a meeting. Those are ways that you can include just healthiness into your work too.
Oh yeah. And I also think, especially if you're giving feedback and maybe some negative feedback, I always love to take a walk, because when they have to come into your office and they're facing you, it can produce anxiety with them. They can feel nervous, it can feel like you're confronting them. But if you're shoulder to shoulder with someone and just walking, there's a more casual, it feels more casual. It feels more relaxed. It feels less like an attack. And so I find that staff can often take feedback better when they're sort of shoulder to shoulder walking than if they come into your office and you have to give them a download on maybe where they may have dropped the ball.
So I wanted to switch gears a little bit and talk about creativity in the workplace and how leaders can help cultivate those creative sparks within their teams. I know sometimes you can get into the whole mundane work of doing the Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, but how can we continue to have those creative sparks within our teams as leaders?
I think one of the most important things is to let your staff get out of the office. whether it's, maybe for an hour on Friday, letting them go to any museum they want, or any sort of cultural event that they would want to, encouraging them to get out of the office for lunch, literally leave the building so that they see new things. And then I feel like when you get outside of the office, those are sometimes when your best ideas happen, because you get inspired by something, you see a piece of art, or you hear someone, in line talking about something that sort of makes you think about something else. So that's one of the biggest things, because I think, how do you expect your workers to be, creative if they're always in the same space, in the same cubicle, and with the same color floor and the same color, walls, and, they can be stifled like that.
Yeah, I think that can be different too with virtual teams, because I lead a virtual team. And I see a lot of event planning roles being more virtual. So how can you ensure that they leave their house, or their desk to take that time?
Maybe you have them put it on their calendar. Just say,
Yeah.
literally, I want to know that you went out to, or if they want to have their lunch at home, go for a walk, get out of the house, do something else than be in the office. I also think restrictions on things can really prevent people from being creative. So I always used to say with my teams at the PR agency, there's no budget. Just come up with an idea. It could be as crazy, as insane as you want. Just go for it. And, then they'd come back with great ideas, and then we'd figure out how to work it into the budget. We'd dial it back or change it, or, then we'd work together as a team to figure out how we could maybe make that possible. Or if it was a really great idea, maybe we'd go back to the client and say, hey, we came up with this insane idea. It's going to cost another $20,000, but we think it's going to have great ROI. What do you think? And I found that really helped them be more creative than saying, okay, you need to do something within this, and it's going to have, have to be this much budget, or it has to be on this theme. Sometimes putting too many restrictions on things can really limit people's ability to think, because they're they're in that lane. And so they're worried about going out of that lane. And I feel like when you go out of those lanes is when you tend to be more creative, and then you can draw it back. Then you can pull it back into whatever theme or budget or whatever you're trying to focus on after the fact, after that great idea comes up.
Right. And I know that, well, I don't know, but I feel like being creative really helps you. It seems as though it's tied to healthiness too, and tied to maybe well-being, because you feel like you're creating and you're kind of in a purpose, and you're working with purpose. And I think it's great for leaders to give that to their teams, and have them create.
Yes. No, absolutely. I also think like assigning different things, or having them share different things that are from other industries or other interesting ideas, are just useful for people to just hear. So, maybe, you do events in the finance industry, but people are talking about something interesting that, something that's happening in healthcare. And finding ways to sort of bridge some of those gaps, but having some of those conversations that are outside of your industry or outside of what you're doing is a kind of a fun way to have everyone do something a little outside of their regular job, but also can prompt ideas and discussion, that kind of stuff.
Great. So I know we're winding down our time here. Wanted to ask you a couple of simple questions, but I always like to hear, what are the favorite apps that people have on their phones that really literally help them with their just what they do? Do you have any apps on your phone to help you with productivity or work-life balance or leadership that you would like to share with everyone?
Yes. So I love Evernote, because it's so versatile, and you can really it can be a brain dump. So I love that. And I can always go back to things, and I know that's never lost because it's always there. So when I want to just get a bunch of stuff out, I do that. I love Acuity Scheduling. So it's a scheduling app that I have through my computer, where people, for the most part, if they're new, I'll go back and forth with them on scheduling. But if I know them, I'll send them a link and I'll say, hey, pick a time that's convenient for you. and my schedule is the way that it is, so that I'm open certain times to take calls, and then or meetings or whatever it may be. And then they click through and they pick a time that's good for them. And of course it's good for me because my calendar's open, and it alleviates that back and forth of emails. Because, for the longest time, so much of my back and forth was, can you do it at Tuesday at 4? No, I can do it Monday at 2. No, I can't do it till next Friday at 1. Oh, to me, it was a waste of time. So that was sort of a good way for me to get eliminate some of those emails and just become more productive that way.
No, I really like that, because a lot of times we're working with different calendaring systems so having an app that would have your calendar in there and just send that to your client and have them pick a time. So that sounds good.
Oh, yeah. And I also love any kind of sort of white noise or timer app, because part of what I do when I sort of to set my tasks is to set a timer. And it's sort of like taking a quiz, like you have to finish by the end of the timer, and it sort of promotes that gaming mentality that happens. So I find that helps me. And they have ones that have white noise, or they have ones that are just countdown timers. And I find that helps me keep on task. I want to beat the clock. So that's another great one that I like to use a lot.
Well, perfect. Thank you so much. I think that those are amazing. Evernote, I heard so much about it. I do not use Evernote, but definitely we'll check that out. I heard there's so much you can do with it.
Yes.
So, you can put in audio, you can put in pictures. So I heard it's very versatile.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. And then finally, what are just your top 3 pieces of advice that you have for other leaders in the industry, just about leading others and balancing it all?
I think, putting yourself first. I said this a little bit in the beginning, but you're going to be your best self and your best leader and your best, partner and best mother, father, sister, brother, friend, if you really do something for yourself first, and try to do it if you can in the morning, because otherwise it may fall to the back of the list. And so I think that's super important. And you come to the day feeling really full, because you're like, all right, well, I already had my time. Like, I'm ready to take on the day and give to everyone else. I think there's a way too much sort of pressure put on certain things. Not everything is an emergency, and not everything is that big of a deal. So many things are, they may be a problem, but they're not the end of the world. So trying to have perspective on some of those things, and, having patience and understanding with your staff about those kinds of things. And then I think really finding ways to encourage and give more opportunities and responsibilities to your staff is probably one of the greatest things that you can do, because they're going to mess some of it up along the way, but they are going to rise. So many times they rise to the occasion and are really hungry for more. So however, information with them, more professional development training or more responsibilities, I think, that is the way to really motivate your employees, is to give them more, have them be learning, having them acquire new skill sets. That's why people want to show up to work, because they're doing something new. They're not bored. They feel motivated. They feel like you believe in them to do more.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. That's amazing advice. I really just appreciate your time that you gave today to be able to come and speak to us about leadership and balancing it all and productivity. You were filled with so much words of knowledge. So thank you so much, Lindsay.
Thank you for having me. And you and I are office supply soulmates, and the fact that we love, I can never have enough, ever.
Yep. Have a stock of Post-its.
Always.
Sure. Always. So again, thank you so much, and I just appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What a wonderful conversation with Lindsay. Thank you so much for coming to the table and discussing work-life balance and everything leadership. It was wonderful to be able to have that discussion with you. I took away so much from that conversation. I really enjoyed Lindsay talking about putting herself first, how she wakes up every morning and makes herself full by doing the things that are important to her before she jumps into her day. And I love it towards the end of the conversation when we talked about her saying, in order to be the best person, the better leader, put yourself first. Do what you need to do first, and then you are able to serve others. So I thought that was very, very powerful and appreciated that advice. Also loved when she was talking about creativity in the workplace, getting your team out of the office, encouraging them to get out of the office at least one day a week just to learn new ideas, just to do something different, do something new. Being out in just free allows you to be able to just learn new things and pick up new ideas and just innovate. And those are things that good leaders need on their teams so that they can keep their teams pushing forward and keep their teams growing. And I really appreciated her, giving us an out as far as event planners go and not putting too much pressure on everything. I think that as event planners, we are type A, we are controlling. We definitely want things to be perfect, but Lindsay did mention have perspective, have patience, have understanding on things that aren't perfect, because no one really kind of hits perfection. So if you can have that understanding, you can be able to really feel proud of the product that you did offer up and stand by it without any humility or embarrassment or anything that's negative. So I know my team is really discussing that point because we've been reading Brene Brown's Dare to Lead. Highly recommend that book. And Brene really talks about perfection and how it's really dangerous for us that we consider things perfect or we strive for perfection. So it's, perfection is only up to a certain person's perspective. It's their perspective of perfect. So we are really in a catch-22 if we start to try to feed in to that. So really we can just, have a healthy way of striving for our teams. I think that's, it's definitely healthy to be able to have that perspective, patience, and understanding that Lindsay was talking about. So really, really thank you so much for joining today. If you can, definitely go and like the podcast, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. And if you can join us on June 5th at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, we will be having a Facebook Live where we'll be talking about Michael Hyatt's new book, which is Free to Focus. Pick up a copy of that book, read it, come equipped for the conversation. If you don't get around to reading it, still come for the conversation. We hope to get some great tips about how to save time by doing less, achieving more, and really just still meeting our goals by doing that. So thank you so much again for joining, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Cheers.